All right. Welcome, everybody. I hope you are settling in, getting ready for a night that's going to change how you practice, change your patients' lives, change more people's lives as you settle in. Come in the door, hit that subscribe button because tonight is only a continuation of the conversation that we've been having and that we're going to continue to have, how to bring life-changing vision therapy to the world. And you are here tonight as vision therapy doctors, therapists, practitioners who are interested in really helping your practice thrive. And so we are so grateful that you're here and that you're joining us tonight. If it is your first time here, my name is Jess Lidke. I'm a certified optometric vision therapist. I'm the vision therapy director with 4D Vision Gym. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, the mastermind of 4D Vision Gym, Dr. Juanita Collier.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you haven't been able to watch our other webinars, definitely go back and catch up on those because we've been going through an entire series as to how to really codify your intellectual property, how to start incorporating digital vision therapy into your practices so that you're scaling your practice and able to help more patients. So today, like Jess said, we're going to be doing a continuation. We're not really going to review too much information. So definitely go back and subscribe to hear more as we develop. And so I think that we can go ahead and dive right in.
Let's do it. So tonight, we're not here to debate the value of vision therapy. Because if you're here, we know it works. We know it changes lives. So instead, we're going to look squarely at something far less discussed, why the very practices delivering this care often struggle financially, even when demand is strong and outcomes are excellent. So some vision therapy practices are growing and scaling and actually becoming more stable, while others, just as clinically strong, are burning out, shrinking, or closing. So the question is, what actually separates these two kinds of practices and these two groups? Because it's not intelligence, and it's not clinical skill, and it's not effort, it's structure. We really are at an inflection point. There are a limited number of VTODs in general. And with insurance changes, economic uncertainty, and an aging class of doctors retiring or closing up shop, access is shrinking. And this is where we're seeing a lot of overlap. OTs and others stepping up to fill gaps, not necessarily because they're more specialized, but because they're more accessible. Families choose shorter wait times, closer locations, flexible options, and even if a specialist exists, that access friction loses patients. A lot of new grads tell us that they are here, there's no money in VT. And that even if they like the idea of it, there's plenty more money for them in the primary care chains and hospitals. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. And when we're talking to, the new grads, that's what they're saying. Even ones who've done VT residencies, they're saying they can't afford to add vision therapy to their practices. So these are people who dedicated like an entire extra year of their lives for residency, and then they can't do it. And so we really need to figure out how we're going to be able to help these new grads get into the field and stay in the field, and also how we're going to save the practices of the doctors who are retiring, and also how we're going to kind of connect those two things without the doctors burning out.
Exactly. And, just to our final point here, because of all of that, and for other reasons, but, you look at even the hospital systems and they're not integrating optometry. They're leaning heavily on ophthalmology, and then they're expecting the OTs to kind of that may have some vision training and some expertise, or even worse, poor patients and their families. They're just trying to go figure it out, and they may have no other answers for improvement. But we know that the question isn't if VT works, it does. The question, the question really now is, how do we let this life-changing therapy survive into a new era of a changing landscape? So obviously today we're not here to scare you. We're here to build with you. We're going to not just tell you the problems, we're going to give you the solutions. So today we're going to talk about the labor model and how that creates a ceiling. We're going to talk about a framework for diagnosing your practice and seeing what's actually going on for you. Then moving from there, what implementation actually can look like and how you can actually make a change in your practice and make it sustainable. And then whatever your next step is, we're here to help you navigate that, identify that, and be with you for it. So this is the model that most of you vision therapy doctors were handed. And for a long, long time, it actually worked really, really well. It's about how many of us built our practices, how we trained our teams, and we delivered really good, meaningful outcomes. But it's very therapist heavy, and that care is dependent on trained staff being physically present. It's location bound because patients have to come to you at a specific time in a specific place from your area. Revenue isn't tied directly to hours. If a patient isn't on the schedule, then care isn't happening. And also, if care isn't happening, then revenue isn't being generated. And of course, there's doctor oversight on everything required to make the process go, which creates not only, it ensures quality, but it does create quite a bottleneck. And ultimately, it's one primary delivery method: in-person, synchronized care. And when you step back, all of these things have something in common. They're all dependent on people, time, and place, which means that this isn't a care model, it's a labor model. And as Dr. Collier put it, labor models have ceilings. And so what that means in practice is that growth is directly tied to you and your people. More patients, you need more therapists. More availability, you need more hours, you need more rooms, you need more coordination. And every layer that you add increases complexity. It increases the need for training. It increases the need for consistency. It increases the need for retention. So even when things are going pretty well, you're often operating close to capacity. And that's not a failure of the practice, it's a limitation of the model. And so at some point, every practice hits that ceiling. The difference is what happens next.
And so when we're thinking about that, and, we think about how much effort it takes to train a therapist, it's a lot. Like, we're trying to pour our brains into their heads. And these are people who didn't necessarily know that they wanted to become vision therapists. They, kind of stumbled into our offices and were like, oh, they seem nice and they're good with kids. And so we hope that we can train them to love vision therapy. And some of them do. And some of them you spend hours, weeks, months, sometimes years, and then they decide they don't like vision therapy. And you've invested so much at that point that a lot of times it starts to feel like, well, how do I get you to stay? And it's that kind of, that's not a feeling that feels good. And then even the ones who do love it, since everything is so tied to their schedule and their time, they feel guilty taking a day off. They feel guilty starting a family. They feel guilty feeling sick. And these are things that make being a vision therapist very unsustainable because so much pressure is landing on you. And we also have like an episode where Jess is kind of talking about how she went through that and she took what we call her sabbatical, where she, left to go have her child and then came back. But oftentimes that's not what happens because you're coming back to something that isn't really amenable to having a family. Patients say that they want 6:00 at night appointments, or they want you to come in on Saturdays. Or we had one family who left a little comment card that we should be open on Sundays. And it's like, great, I'll never see my family. What are you talking about? And so how do we make this that we can still provide the care that we want and that, we know that we're capable of, without having this feeling of, this albatross around your neck all the time. And that's what we're really working on. We're really working on a way to take the information that's in your head, codify it, and be able to deliver it even when you're not in the room.
Exactly. And all of that, creates that ceiling. And you're going to hit that ceiling because it's not theoretical. You will feel it. And it usually doesn't show up all at once. It kind of shows up in these patterns, right? So when your overhead starts rising because growth requires more people, more space, more coordination, more supplies, more paper for your printer, more, all that overhead does start to add up when you have a high demand. And then you start seeing therapists leave, just as you were talking about, Dr. Collier. If you don't have the therapist staying, then you've got to replace them and you've got to retrain them and you've got to rebuild that consistency that you worked so hard to invest in your team. And then, of course, that kind of cycles back to the doctors, and the doctors are burning out because more and more and more responsibility just gets funneled back to you. But that demand keeps growing because your outcomes are still pretty strong, and capacity just cannot keep up. And these all feel like separate problems, but they're actually all symptoms of the same constraint because you're pushing against that ceiling of a labor-based model. And you can have two practices with the same demand and the same skill set and even the same kind of team, but one will grow while the other slowly breaks. And that's not a people problem. That's a model problem. So now you can understand the difference between those practices that are surviving and the practices that are actually building something sustainable. So the only real question left is, which side are you going to build on? So now that we know that modern thriving vision therapy practices aren't just working harder, they're operating across 4 distinct dimensions. And most struggling practices are actually strong in one, maybe 2, but they're missing the full system that creates that actual sustainability. And the first is what you already do extremely well, and that's the in-office work. That's the evaluation, the clinical decision-making, the hands-on refinement for those complex cases. That's the highest value piece of care. And that doesn't go away. If anything, it becomes more important. We're going to get into that, I promise. But where things start to break down is what happens between the visits. In thriving practices, that's not left to chance. It's structured. Patients know exactly what to do, how to do it, and how they're progressing. It's not the go home and try it. It's a guided system. And that's where our structured hybrid delivery comes in. Now, the third dimension is where a lot of practices hit that ceiling because everything lives in the doctor's head or in the therapist's experience. And this is what we've actually heard from OTs from across the US. A VTOD will assign activities to the patients they've seen for an exam, but that can't commit to VT with them, either via like neurovisual trainer or iHero, or they'll give them written instructions and then send them on their way. And hopefully they have a caring OT that is nearby that can help them figure it out. But again, it still takes that doctor's actual effective magic out of their hands because it takes the standardization away, left up to interpretation by the patient, by their families, and maybe their OTs. And nothing on the VTOD side really actually scales. But thriving practices have codified how they think. They explain things, how they progress patients, how they train their staff. And that's what makes that consistency and scale possible. And that fourth is the natural result of the first 3. If you're no longer limited to who can physically be in your office 3 times a week, if you're that kind of high touch support system, you can support patients who otherwise would have said no because of distance, because of cost, because of scheduling. And just to be really clear, once again, this is not less care. It's more organized care. And that organization is what actually creates resilience in the practice.
And so when we're thinking about these 4 dimensions too, we have to look at the cost to that practitioner as well. And so when we're looking at that top level, the dimension 1 there, and we're really thinking about, okay, we know insurance is doing what insurance does. So can't really take insurance, like maybe you can figure out a way to kind of be creative with it and figure out how to maybe get your patients reimbursed sometimes if they have a particular person that the insurance company that wants to pay them that day and things like that. But when you get these highly skilled therapists, you need to pay them a lot for them to stay. And so it starts to become an issue where it's like you have somebody that you've trained so well and they've been there for so many years and you can't lose them. So now you're essentially paying them everything that the patient is being charged. And so that's a lot of times where our vision therapy doctors are running into issues as well, because we have our overhead and we have our therapist salary, because now we have these COVTs and we have these amazing therapists that are just so great, but you can only charge the patient but so much. And if you are taking reimbursements directly from insurance companies, then you're not getting reimbursed anything anyway. And so a lot of times what we're seeing when we're talking to doctors across the country is that they're really at this point funding their vision therapy departments with their dry eye department or with their optical and things like that. So eventually this passion project that they have because they love vision therapy so much becomes such a strain on their practices that they can't afford to do it anymore. Then the other option is to hire someone who might not need to make so much. And maybe they have difficulty with coming in all the time, or maybe they can only work a few hours or specific hours and things like that, where now you're working around their schedules because now finances are dictating who you can have on your floor. When finances are dictating who you can have on your floor, then you need to be much more involved in care because you need to make sure the quality of care is still there. And then we have to also be concerned about when they do end up leaving because, people aren't operating in a bubble. So if you have somebody who's great and they're, you're able to pay them what they would like to make and things like that, or they're able to rely on somebody else in their family to kind of compensate for what they're making or not making, then you have the situation where they might need to move or they might need to find another job because now their spouse lost their job and things like that. And so now you're in this position, and if you stay in that level 1 where you're only doing the in-office vision therapy, you're in a position where you really can't afford to offer vision therapy as your primary source of income because you're just not going to make the income that you need for that. Then when we go into the second layer, that hybrid delivery, we all do it. We have the videos at home where it's like, okay, this is how you can practice and this is how you do it. But then we have the patients coming in that are saying, well, in the office, we did it this way. And now you're doing it this way in this video. And it's confusing. And they don't know how to do the exercise, or why are there beads on the string, different colors than the beads in the video, and all of that. And also, we all explain things very differently. And so I have a different experience in my, 20 years of doing vision therapy than somebody else might have. So I might explain something like the Brock string very, very differently than somebody else would. And yes, they're going to be effective in both ways, but what is your patient expecting? My patients are expecting what I have in my head because that's what they heard in the exam. And that's why they're coming to me and that's why they're paying me. And so what we want to do is figure out what is it that I have in my head and how to get that to the patient repeatedly. And that's really goes into level 3, when now my patients are able to access my brain anytime that they want. So if they're the type of person who wants to practice their vision therapy at 11 o'clock at night, here we are. We're right there with you, even though, Jess and I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we're way, way past our bedtime even right now, to be honest. But
it's a little late.
Whenever they need to. And that's what really benefits our patients. And so we have patients who are practicing on business trips and they're at Disney practicing, and that's not what my kids wanted to do when they were at Disney, but whatever works for your family, that's completely fine. And so that really makes it so that you can get to that next level where now you're able to provide services to people who maybe it's too far of a drive, maybe it's too expensive, but they're still getting the same care that you deliver because they're getting the information straight from your head.
Exactly. And from your head, that is where your clinical genius lives, right? So we're going to dive deeper into these dimensions. And again, your office work is your zone of genius. It is the work that only you can do. And there will never not be a place for that. Okay. But by creating the other dimensions of your practice, it gives you the time and the money and the freedom to invest in it without letting it drain you. Right. But when you add in your structured hybrid care, that level 2, that second dimension, therapy doesn't stop when your patient leaves your office, and everything works better because of that. Layer 2 is what extends your therapy beyond the visit. And without this layer, the home therapy is inconsistent, and it's often just try this at home, and that execution varies quite a bit. But when you have the structure, patients are following clinician-designed programs between visits. It's not homework, it's guided care. And without it, a lot of between-visit care is very ad hoc. It depends on the therapist of the day and in the patient. And with it, you have defined protocols. It's consistent, it's repeatable, it's documented. And when you don't have the structure, patients, and honestly, sometimes those providers aren't always sure where they are in the process. And with it, that progression becomes very clear. Every step is sequenced, and patients know exactly what's coming next. And without that between visit structure, patients, they'll disengage. That's where you see a lot of cancellations. That's where you see a lot of drop-offs. But when they're actively progressing between your visits, they stay engaged and you see fewer no-shows. So you really need this layer because without it, that accountability relies very heavily on you and your staff and your team and the follow-ups and the reminders, and you need to stay on top of everybody. But when you have that structure, accountability is built into the system. You've got your check-ins, you've got your milestones, you've got your feedback loops, and it's part of the care model. So you really need that structured work to happen between the visits. Everything has to happen, not just in the office, because that really limits how many patients you can support. You can support more with it. You can add more patients without just adding more hours. So the shift here is simple but powerful. Care is no longer confined to the appointment. When that happens, consistency improves, engagement improves, and capacity expands without relying purely on more labor.
And so we also kind of need to discuss the elephant in the room, which is AI. So as you know, AI is here and it's here to stay, and it's made information so accessible, which is amazing because we're getting a lot more patients that are like, oh, there's something I can do that's not surgery or putting my child on medication, and just accepting this as my new normal. That's great. So it's bringing patients into our practice. And also it's giving patients a lot of information as far as, you can type into ChatGPT or Claude, which exercises should I do for my child's convergence insufficiency? And you'll come up with a whole therapy protocol. So what makes the patient still need to come to see you? What makes the patient still need to come to see you is all of the experience that you have, all of the ways that you explain things, all of the ways that you give to modify everything that needs that human touch, you're able to still provide without them necessarily being in your office as frequently as, once a week or twice a week or however frequently you normally see your patients. So now they're still getting the human touch. They're still getting you. They're still building that bond with you. and you're not needing to expend more labor, more time, more effort. Anything that you repeat, you should record. That's pretty much like the rule of everything. But really, remember, patients can figure out a lot of things. There's a lot of YouTube videos on how to do Brock string and things like that. So what are you bringing to your patients in the age that we're in now, not where we were in the 1950s with Skeffington? Like, where are we today, and what is available to patients, and why should they come and see you versus doing anything else? And that's really your intellectual property that you've developed over all of these years.
Did I even tell you I saw this? I'm sure a lot of you there, doctors saw this on one of the Facebook groups of vision therapy parents that said, like, posted a picture of a link of a vision therapy kit that you could buy online and said, has anybody bought this and just done their own vision therapy?
No,
You know,
I did not see that, and that makes me sad.
and every practitioner in the room went, ah! You know? But this is it. This is exactly what Dr. Collier is talking about right there. It's where the practice needs to scale, because you take what's in your brain and you record it, you standardize it. And it doesn't matter, you know, if they caught you when you're really, really sleepy or when you're energized and had a lot of caffeine, your explanations kind of come from your brain and go directly to them the way you want it to, right? And that is repeatable, that is scalable, that is able to work with 150 patients the same way that it works with one patient sitting in front of you, right? It is your repeatable clinical methodology, as well as how you train your people to be able to do the things that you need to do in your office. So even down to your therapist training systems, those can be, kind of codified from how you want your therapists to represent you and your practice. And then that makes onboarding just that much more scalable, that much more, effective, so that when you do have your in-office high-touch patients that you really need to be more involved in, they already they come in because your staff knows everything that's going on. They have some more background information. They have more access to everything on their own as well. And so everybody kind of has this great knowledge base that came all from you.
Exactly. And so oftentimes in like the series that we started today on the YouTube channel is really talking about how we codify that information, because it often feels like we're making decisions in real time. And maybe when you first start practicing, you are making decisions in real time. And so you're really seeing like, okay, this patient's coming in and you have their symptom survey and you're looking at their ranges and you're looking at their NPC and all of these things. And you feel like you're making a decision right then. And you're kind of like trying out this exercise and guessing and checking and this, that, and the other until the person gets better. After you have a few years under your belt, you can kind of look at an intake form and pretty much know what the person's diagnoses are. And yes, your exam, you want to see how they're reacting to your different lenses, and you want to understand how they're tensing up and how they're walking and how they're doing all of these things in your exam room in relationship to how you're putting things in front of them. And based off of that information, it might appear as though you're making a decision, but really what you're doing is you're tapping into your knowledge base of all of the information that you've acquired over the years, and then kind of spitting out what you know to do in that specific situation. So when you're codifying your intellectual property, what we want to do is really figure out, what is it that you're tapping into? And most doctors have not documented that. Most doctors see their therapist doing things in the therapy room and they're like, oh no, you should be doing this differently. And it seems like, oh wow, you've made a decision right in real time. But you actually haven't. You're tapping into, okay, I know what this posture means. I know what it means when we put this lens in front and then they grab the chair and things like that. So how do you then document all of that? Because once you do, Then your therapists provide better therapy. Your patients can then access your brain when you're not in the room, and you're getting so many more patients so much better, so much more quickly, without you putting in more labor, without you needing to review every session that your patients are in and everything like that. You're really getting all of that information that you've stored up over these years onto a platform where your patients can access it, where your therapist can access it, where now it's your brain that's doing the delivering.
And so what we have seen when we have implemented this actual process, it's our 4D method. What it actually produces is that our patients are more compliant because they actually understand what they're doing. They progress between their sessions and they get better outcomes. That's really what it comes down to, right? And when we have better outcomes, we have happy patients. We have them telling their friends that, we changed their lives, that this, oh, your kid is struggling with reading. Have you tried this? Have you looked into this? And you know how it goes like that. But even though you have that higher demand, your wait list then goes down. Because that home-based program, if you have that accessibility, that means that you get to see and help so many more patients than what you have capacity for in your office. And they can start immediately. They're not sitting around waiting because, again, not to go back to that Facebook group, but you have seen how many posts there are. What can I do while my child is waiting to get it into our local clinic? What kinds of exercises should I start them with? Who should I see in the meantime? And all of these parents are looking for answers now. And if you can give it to them now, then you're going to have that repeatable, scalable impact all across the world.
And that's what I was going to bring that up, because we see patients that are writing in that Facebook page where it's like, oh, we're not going to be able to start vision therapy for 3 months. And then they go on, they try to figure things out, because as a concerned parent, as somebody recovering from a concussion, as somebody who wants to get back to working or driving or anything, you're going to try to figure out how to get there. And that might mean that you end up in the hands of a different sort of practitioner who's kind of trying to figure out, maybe they can help your vision. And they took, a 10-hour PESI course or something like that, and now they feel like they have enough information to help you, and it's better than you sitting on a 3-month waiting list. However, sometimes that bit of information is just enough to make somebody worse, or just enough to make somebody, now more symptomatic or harder for us to treat when we finally do get them back. Yeah. Just because somebody has a Virgin's problem does not mean that you should be doing Brock string. Right?
Over and over and over and over and over and over.
Oh my goodness, please stop with the Brock string. Please, can we treat everything that's underlying first? Because you are giving these people double vision. You're giving them headaches. You're giving them all the things because you don't know the full understanding of the visual system like we do. But if we're not able to provide it the way that we know how, and we're refusing to use a different delivery model, then the patients have no choice, and the other practitioners have no choice, because they need to help the person in front of them. So how do we make it so that we're able to help the people in front of us, and so that they can get into our office for an exam and get treatment right away, regardless of if our therapist wants to go on vacation, because they should go on vacation. Therapists do God's work. They should be able to go on vacation.
Thank you.
You're
By the way, I won't be in tomorrow. And
yes, you will. I'll come to your house.
Right. But that does, and that brings us to the continuity, right? Therapists do have to go on vacation. Therapists do need maternity leave. Therapists do have, lots of different reasons. Kids,
and they're sick.
Kids get sick a lot.
Too often. Wash your hands.
But when you have your method, your clinical knowledge, and theirs too, when you have really good quality therapists, I'd like to say, I have contributed to a lot of our digital programs by like kind of bottling up my therapeutic self and mind into our programs as well. But then we have continuity, regardless of what's happening from day to day with vacations, with leaves, with, when someone does have to move on, you still have that continuity of care that keeps consistency going for your patients, regardless of what's happening in your actual four walls. And beyond those four walls, then you're able to help so many more patients from all over the place. We hear a lot from a lot of VTODs all over this country and the world saying, hey, I'm the only one within 3 hours of me. They have patients coming to them from all over. We know that, even patients come internationally to see the kind of doctor that they want to see. And then they like do an intensive and then they go home. And then what? It's kind of like they feel better now, but is that sustainable? Is everything going to stick for them? And so now with codifying your IP, you are able to treat patients and families around the world, regardless of where they are. And I will keep saying it and I will sing this until the cows come home. This is the hill I will die on. Your digital programs are not lower quality.
At all.
They're not. And we always tell this story that when we first came up with our first digital program, Built to Read, we built it for our wait list. We built it as a do this before we can get you in for our in-office care. And then they were coming in not needing in-office care, because what we did is that we really distilled our therapeutic method so that they did not need to come into the office with us. The quality is there. The quality can be there when it is done right. So, it is definitely not watering down what you do.
At all. Yes.
At all.
Exactly.
And then, of course, this is the part that we always say, everybody kind of feels a little squidgy talking about, but it's very important. Revenue. It is important, and it's no longer capped by hours, and it's no longer capped by people. Your home programs generate income when your visits are also doing the heavy lift. Okay, that all sounds great, but what do I do?
Do I press download from my brain? Is that how this works?
You're just gonna take it and go plop, right? But then, of course, doctors are telling us they don't have time to build programs from scratch. Valid. You don't. You are busy. And even if I did have the time, I'm not even sure where to start. I don't even know how to build these programs from scratch. I don't know what is good stuff. I don't know what is bad stuff. I don't know what camera I need to be using. Everything is very overwhelming. A lot of our doctors also hear that, they just are clinicians and they want to be doctors. And so now we're asking you to stop and think about who you are and what you really actually want. It's time to design. This is that diagnostic point. Okay. What does your practice look like? Really think about these questions. When it works for you instead of on you. Think about it. If you didn't have to be involved in every single situation, every single decision, every single patient, what role do you really actually want to play? And what can you let go of? What should you actually stop carrying? That's a hard one for a lot of our doctors.
They can't let it go. They just can't let go.
It is hard. It is hard. You're a doctor for a reason, right? You're a go-getter and you're a practice owner for a reason, right? You want to be in that role. Get it. We understand. But what do you not need to be in charge of? Because if you are in charge of all of that, if you are involved, if your hand is in every single pot, how scalable is that? How sustainable is that? And so then what does sustainability look like for your team, everybody, your patients, and for you?
And so when we're thinking about that too, and kind of what you're holding on to, we have to think that we have only but so much capacity. And so, as vision therapy doctors, most of us are very, very creative because, as we say, it's like you can fix anything with a Brock string, like on a deserted island. You can, figure out how to get tracking in Marson ball. You can do all the things like with one exercise. With one tool, I mean, because we can really be very, very creative about how we're going to help that patient organize their visual system and all of that. But we can only do that when we have the space. You can only be creative when you have the space to be creative. And if you're holding everything, if you're holding, how do we schedule, which patients need to be seen for how long when they're calling in for their intakes and things like that. We have so many doctors that are making the decisions, this person called in, how long should I book their appointment? This person's coming in, which perceptual testing are we going to do? And it's all of this information that you're holding on to. So you don't have the space to be creative. And if you don't have the space to be creative, there's a limit on how many people you can help. All of us, every single one of us came into this because we want to help as many people as possible. VT docs didn't go into it for the money. And a lot of people are saying you can't go into it for the money. But we came into this because we want to change the world like one child at a time. So we can't do that if we're holding on to admin tasks. We can't do that if we're constantly adjusting people's posture in therapy because our therapists weren't fully trained on that. We can't do that if we're needing to micromanage every part of the practice because we didn't step back and take everything from our brain and download it. And that's essentially what we really need to do. And then that's going to make your practice sustainable. That's going to make it so that, not just your therapist can go on vacation, but maybe you can too, because that'd be great, right? And so what we really need to do is figure out what you can let go of and how you can codify everything that you have inside of your brain there.
And so what that actually looks like in practice is when you build the systems that make it scalable. So you actually take your explanations of diagnoses, you record it once, and you deliver it consistently. You take your therapy sequencing, it's documented, it's teachable, it's not trapped in your head, and you don't look over and go, why are they doing this instead of that? That doesn't make any sense. And it takes your whole patient journey in a structured and step-by-step way, not improvised by whoever kind of shows up that day. Your expertise is not just up here. You actually step by step can make it an easily accessible tool that then creates that scale for your patients and for you. And if it's just in your head, that is a big problem because it's a liability. Because if you get, hit by a bus tomorrow,
knock on wood,
but heaven forbid that happens, where's your legacy? Where's your knowledge? Think about, one of the giants in our field, Bob Sannett. May he rest in peace. May his memory be a blessing. He took his seminars and he recorded them. So now, even though he's gone, there are generations of therapists that can learn directly from him, from his mouth, from his methodology, from his expertise.
So amazing.
What a legacy to leave behind, right? And, may we all live to be Bob Sannett, but at the same time, think about it. What would leave with you? And so that's what you want to put somewhere.
Exactly. And imagine if he had a program that was him speaking to a patient the entire time and him explaining everything. Like that would be just like chef's kiss, amazing. Thankfully, the doctors are learning it, but that's something that you now can leave behind because that's where we're going in our, where the field is going. This is what patients want. They want the expert in their home. So be the expert in their home. But also, I just wanted to circle back to something you were saying before with the explanations of things and you really being able to deliver that. What we've heard from quite a few therapists is that they get hired and they're kind of just like thrown on the floor and it's like, just do this exercise, it's fine, you'll figure it out, everything's fine. And one therapist that I was speaking to recently, she was saying that for her like first month of doing vision therapy, she was using red and green glasses patched, and she didn't know that that was a problem. And I'm like, okay, well, but if you actually have your information there recorded, then your therapist can learn directly from you, not from a therapist that you trained who trained a different therapist who's now having this person help them because somebody came in at the wrong appointment time. So now this person has two people that they're trying to see, and they're kind of just like looking over to kind of make sure that you're keeping the other patient occupied, which, I know none of us have ever been in that situation, but just say that you ever have.
Exactly. So when you involve these different layers, when you really are able to codify your IP, when you're able to scale and build and all these beautiful things, what actually changes is that you lead a practice built on the structure. And when you think about when you don't have all these things in place, again, every decision runs through you, every exception is yours to handle. Even your staff, like, oh, are they allowed to do that? Let's just check with the doctor. Oh, should we do that? Let's just check with the doctor. And then every absence breaks something. You take a vacation, the practice goes to heck in a handbasket because every process is used to relying on you.
Or even so with doctors when they go on vacation, a lot of times when they're like, oh, so then I want my whole staff to go on vacation when I go on vacation.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's like we really want to see like what is it that is so magical about you being there to deliver the care. And obviously state laws are different. So, you might need to actually be in the room. I think that in New York State, I don't know if it's changed, but like you actually have to be like in the same room as everyone doing vision therapy. And so obviously you can only make but so much if you're doing that because there's only one of you. So you can never be sick. You can never go to the bathroom. I don't know how that law works with that. But in other places, it's direct oversight. And so what does that mean? And then really looking at your state laws and figuring out what that is. But if it is that your state law is that you need to be on the floor, then you definitely need a digital program because your patients should be able to still get better if you go on vacation. If your child is graduating from something and you would like to be there, if you want to go to a soccer game, you shouldn't need to cancel the entire night of patients. And so what are you doing to actually set your life up the way that you probably envisioned it when you decided to start your own practice? Because I'm assuming that when you decided to start your own practice, it wasn't because you expected to be chained there all the time in order for anything to be able to happen. One of our doctors was telling us a story about how her office manager was out sick. And she said that she was like just checking off every time somebody asked her a question that she thought that somebody should know the answer to. She's like, I felt like I was in a jail cell just counting down the days. And I'm like, oh my. And I understand that visual. So it's kind of like, okay, how is even just how your practice is run? How is that being systematized? And how are you making this practice something where it's not 100% dependent on you all the time or one amazing person who works for you? Because yes, we would like our team members to stay with us until forever. And obviously Jessica has to, but I mean, in other practices, maybe that's not what's going to happen. So like what happens in that case? Like, are you really completely, destabilized, or have you built an actual company? And that's what we need to be going for. We need you to have a company, not just an office.
Exactly. So what this model has actually generated is our proof, right? We have had over $300,000 in digital revenue generated. And our programs range in price from $500 to about $2,000, a little bit more. And our treatment lengths are between 2 and 6 months. So all of our digital programs were built while we were actually learning. So this was kind of almost before we knew what we were doing.
Way before.
Because again and again and again and again, what we are telling you is we just took our clinical brain and put it in a program. And our revenue kind of grew because we had the digital component while we were still doing what we've always done. And so if we took what we've always done, but then expanded that outside of us, then it was golden. And again, it does not mean diluted care. It was structured care. Once we figured that part out, then everything else became gravy because we were using the same clinical care with a more reliable and structured infrastructure.
And so this, like Jess was saying, was, through all of our trials and tribulations and figuring out this software versus this software and, oh no, what happened to this? And what we've done at this point is we've lowered our learning curve so much that I sometimes will be like, oh, you know what? we need to create a program for this patient. And then
Sometimes,
like a lot of times. But now it's just like second nature for us and for our practice, because we know how to make it happen and how to make it work so easily. And that's what we want to convey to you. We don't want you to need to make the same mistakes that we did or make the same investments that maybe we shouldn't have and things like that. Like really, like how do we get your information into a program so people can use it as quickly as possible? And that's really the goal, because that's what our patients need.
So we've got to figure out where you are. Okay, so really look at what stage of this is you and what your next step will be, because that's kind of like if this, then that, if this, then that. So if you are the kind of person, the kind of doctor who wants to start offering your at-home programs right now without having to build anything, just knowing that you have reliable, consistent, structured care that works, then R4D Vault gives you the built line suite ready to prescribe. You can just start using it with your patients immediately, and you don't have to do much of anything.
And there's years of proof, years of experience, and years of testimonials that you can have and give your patients, and you don't have to worry about anything.
But if you're the kind of doctor that knows that you have those years of expertise and you want to package up that expertise, you want to be the next Bob Sannett that generations can live and learn from, you want to start packaging the programs of your own, that's Vision to Venture. And that will help turn your clinical IP into that structured, monetizable system.
Quickly.
And then there's those who want to scale. They're ready to think like a CEO. They are not just a clinician. They are the boss of their practice. They're ready to take the reins and grow their practice without having to be there every single minute of every single day. Built to Scale helps you redesign how your practice operates and gives you the systems and the team, and helps you build your team and helps you increase your revenue. Again,
I think you said this enough.
I cannot say it enough. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. So what those thriving practices do differently that other struggling practices don't do is they build systems that work without them in every room. They decouple their revenue from their hours that have worked. They codify their clinical expertise, and they stop being the bottleneck for what can grow. And so the price of staying in the old model is practices that are fragile, deliveries that are inconsistent, doctors and therapists that are burning out, growth that's capped by your calendar, by your availability. And it ain't working. It it's simply not working anymore. So there are those three paths that you really need to look at and decide what is happening next. If you make your own, you could spend lots of hours, lots of money trying to create a system that works unless you know what you're doing. So this is our 4D Vault. These are the programs that we have built by clinicians for clinicians that take more of our theory and create the execution. So we have, a whole suite of programs that cover the entire lifespan of a patient from toddlers through adults. We have programs for kids. We have programs for soon to be or rehabbing drivers, for neurodivergent young adults that want to be drivers and want to be independent. We have a whole host of programs that are clinically proven to be effective and not diluted care. And we have partnered with lots of doctors across the country who are now implementing these programs in their clinics with their patients and finding success. And then we have Vision Adventure, which is our cohort of teams of doctors with live support, with templates, with real-time feedback. So you're not just building your programs from scratch, kind of guessing and trying this and trying that. We actually help you build it from the ground up so that you can actually build and launch your own digital program quickly without all the guesswork that we had to do when we were figuring it out. So it's more than just that support to build your own digital program. Vision Adventure can transform the way that you practice VT. And it does have some elements of how you run your practice and and the care that your patients receive. But really, it's all about that, taking that expertise and putting it into your program so that your patients can benefit. And then finally, that's Built to Scale. That's our ongoing container for doctors who are no longer asking if digital programs belong in their practice. They know they are, but they're focused on how to scale it and their practice well. So it's for doctors that are actively building or have already built a digital arm and don't want to do it alone and don't want to do it inefficiently or by trial and error, because trial and error is expensive, honey.
Very, very expensive.
So we hope that this brings you some clarity. This is how we're helping you just kind of align with what needs to happen for you, for your practice, and for your patients. We don't want you to leave this webinar with more ideas. We want you to be clear on what you need to do next and be actually clear on that, because that clarity is what changes what is possible. So here is your actual next step. Number one, actually, before this, you're going to hit subscribe down in our YouTube channel.
Hear more from us.
Yes, because this conversation didn't start with this webinar and it does not end with this webinar. You really, want to dig deep and understand what practices need to be doing differently. But then you visit us at 4delevate.com and you figure out which pillar you're in right now. Are you in the implement stage? Are you in the design stage? Or are you in the building stage or scaling stage? Because then once you really kind of sort that out, and maybe you need some help from Dr. Collier and I to really understand what that is. So please book a consultation, ask your questions, and then we can start building. Because the model that you use to, deliver your vision therapy, it's not working anymore. The model that we've been using, it's not working. We need to build a new life, a new world, a new practice, and help this many more patients.
Exactly. And like I said, we're in a completely new era. We thought AI would take longer to get to where it is. And it seems like every month it can do something else. And we need to really preserve that human factor. And this is how we do it. So we need to really make sure that obviously AI is not going to take our jobs, but we want to make sure that AI doesn't make it harder for patients to get the care that they need. We want them to know the care that they need because they're learning from AI that they can get better. And then we need us to be able to deliver the care that they need. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you next time. Subscribe, like, share it with a friend. And we really hope to work with you soon.
See ya.